Do we have a salute to the flag recording today?
Not a recording, just a plain old flag.
Okay, I think we can handle that.
Okay.
Let's do the salute to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And we had a few agenda changes that came out this morning. Everybody have those? Next on the agenda is privilege of the floor, public comment. Do we have any members of the public who would like to address the board? Okay. Next, we are moving on to cabinet reports and updates. Do we have, who's going first? Elementary school. So it looks like Ms. Conover will be presenting first. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we want to do for the summer this year. We have been taking a look at some of our more students who have been heavily impacted by the remote instruction, those who still have not returned yet. And we wanted to really think about an acclimation process over the summer in person, like a 2-3 week sessions to get them back up and going, and how with ELA instruction, with math instruction, and then just being back in the school as well. And we're looking at how some of the kids had fared on the NWEA, the F&P, and the classroom assessments. And our first round of interviewees or invitees will be the kids who are remote and still not seem to be able to meet some of the benchmarks of the grade level. And then, of course, the other students as well. So Mrs. Benjamin is starting to put together a list of send out letters inviting families. We will not be offering this remote. We're trying to mitigate some of the fallout of remote. So we really would like in person, the kids to attend in person. We have, believe it or not, it's hard to believe we're in March, but we're already heading into like kindergarten screening and registration, as well as simultaneously we do UPK as well. But because of our UPK program, we do assessments 3 times a year. And it's the same assessment we use for incoming K. So we'll have very few kids because we have quite a few that are already in UPK. But Mrs. Hallberg and our speech pathologist and our OT will be putting together a schedule for that in the building. One of the things that I did recommend to the superintendent is that one of the things we often see is at the preschool level, there are children who have been under the radar. And when we get them in for kindergarten screening, we see like they've not had an opportunity for a preschool program or for other things. And we want to give them a little boot, just a little jump start. Here's school, here's a little introduction to your pre-readiness skills. Because if you try to look at the county level, which is what you do at preschool, they kind of have a hands-off approach because, well, they're going to be yours in a few months. So I wanted a little program just to give a little jump start for our incoming kindergartners who haven't had much exposure. And I wanted to talk about that. We actually had 20 students return this week from remote instruction, I was really glad that those parents felt comfortable with us and were really secure in sending the kids back. And they were, some of the kids were very excited to be back, and it was so glad to have them back. And they just easily came right back into the classroom, and they are doing well. So thank you.
Right. So I guess I'm next. So I'm going to present on a couple different things that have happened in the high school. The first thing I wanted to kind of talk about was some of the fun things that we've done. So we did a senior carnival. For those of you who have seniors, your kids actually got to come, and we had sledding in the background. We had kettle corn. It was a great afternoon for the seniors. Only the seniors were able to go outside. They had some lawn chairs that they set up so that they could socialize. They made walking tacos. So it was really a nice day for the seniors. We did that on February 26th. We're looking to do another one in the spring up in the back parking lot again, just so that our kids can kind of spend some time and have some normalcy as to what seniors get to do when they get to be seniors. To follow up with that, we also did a PBIS day for everybody else for 6/12. We did that on February 24th. So we did that on the Wednesday before the senior day. And that was really, a great day for a number of our kids because we kind of went back over expectations of what it's like to be in a school. But we also talked about, what we're thankful for and maybe what our goals are. And hopefully we're going to see it out on the website or on Facebook. But we did take pictures of the kids did hands. They also did snowflakes, and they got to write on those hands and on those snowflakes what they were grateful for. And the nice thing about it is a number of them actually they wrote things like, I'm really grateful for my family. I'm really grateful for my friends. So that is very touching to see them be able to do that. This week, we are participating in a wellness week. There's a wellness committee that a number of us are on. We've been working really closely with Melissa Peterson from the PTA. She helped put all of this stuff together. So every day we've been showing some great wellness activities in our PE classes and also in our academic period. And it's focused on everything from how to take care of your mental well-being, how to reframe your thinking, how to get physically fit. It's kind of a neat thing that we're doing every day. So those are kind of the fun things that we've been doing. Most of you probably have questions about the state assessments and the Regents exams. I was hoping to have a little bit more information, but they are meeting this week. We still are planning at this point to have our ELA. I know Andrew's building is going to do the same thing. We're still planning to do the ELA assessment April 20th, the week of April 20th, and keeping our fingers crossed that, everything kind of runs the way it's supposed to run. As far as Regents exams, again, we're still waiting. I'm sure most of you have seen the news. We're still waiting to hear what we're going to offer, if we're going to offer them, and what that's going to look like. So I have that on my slide. I probably should have taken it off because I didn't really have any update, which I thought I was going to, but unfortunately I don't. We also are going to participate in summer school. Every year, for those of you who've been part of the board, you know that we do participate in a 7-8, we include the 6th graders summer program in our building that we do through the Distance Learning Consortium. That's for 3 weeks. It's for ELA and math. We do encourage our kids who may be struggling, and we have so many remote kids, so we are going to offer this to any student who might be interested in coming in. It will be an in-person with things being streamed from other schools because we work with a consortium on that. But we are also looking to offer a full summer school program with the consortium that we belong to from BOCES, which at this point, they're tentatively saying that it might be held at Cobleskill. Again, we will encourage our students who maybe didn't make it where we wanted them to this year. I'm pushing them, and I know Jim also is pushing them, that we want an in-person. We do not want a remote. For us, for the high school kids, that's what we're doing, and the kids who really are struggling are the ones who are remote. So for me to offer a remote option to my students that aren't doing well, it's the same thing I'm offering now. So we're really pushing for that in-school environment for our kids. We are moving forward with the prom plans, even though the governor keeps changing everything. But at this point, we had a meeting again today with the class advisors. They've been meeting with their students, Jim and Jeff and myself. So we are looking to have prom on June 23rd, and we will graduate on the 25th. We're going to use the same tent. We're hoping that we're going to be able to have dancing. So we're going to hope, and we're going to get a dance floor, and we're going to get a caterer, and we're going to get all of the fun things and make it as much of a traditional prom for our students. It just will be on our campus. So I'm very excited about that. And, I want to thank Jim publicly. We wouldn't be able to do this if he wasn't willing to find some money to help support the seniors, because as all of you know, the seniors were not able to raise any money last year and or this year, and those are the 2 biggest years for seniors to raise money. So, his willingness to be open and work with us as a class it's very heartwarming for our kids. We are also going to have graduation on the 25th, and that will be kind of like what we did last year, but hopefully with more people. Again, we're going to wait to see what the governor says, but we are moving forward with the plans for graduation. Okay, just a couple more things, so bear with me. We have been busily working on an equity summit. Jim had this great idea. We're going to work with other districts, but I'm going to talk about what we're doing in our building. I've been working with Kendra Shadina and myself and the student council, and we're going to present to our students an equity summit on March 19th. We're putting together plans. It's going to look a lot like our PBIS day, but it will be about equity. Trying to give our kids a good basis as to what equity is before we roll it out and do an entire seminar to other school districts. So it's kind of like a trial as to what this is going to look like. So I'm very excited about that. It's kind of nice to do something that's a little normal, or whatever normal is, but it actually is kind of fun to do something that kind of fits in a high school. And then finally, I'm just like, this is just an FYI. We are looking at the potential of doing block scheduling for next year. I've been meeting with the teachers. We've been meeting with other school districts that currently do block scheduling. One of the big reasons that I'm looking at doing block scheduling is because I think if there's a time to make an adjustment, this is probably the time. Things are, people don't really remember what the real school year looks like. We're also looking to pair up our schedule with a number of other school districts so that we can offer more distance learning programs for our kids. So that's a whole lot. I kind of ran the gamut, but if you all have questions, let me know. So, but it is exciting. I mean, like right now, it was a sunny day today and kids just had a nice little pep in their step. So hopefully we'll be back to normal soon.
Great, thank you. Did anyone have any questions for Ms. Marvin before we move on? Okay, we reserve the right to think of them later. Next is Ms. Hardenstein.
Hi, good evening. We celebrated our senior nights last week for the winter sports. We did it a little earlier than we normally do, just in case something happened and we weren't able to finish out the season. So I want to give a shout out to our seniors, Taylor Meyer, Eric Bates, Matt Coons, Shane Shafalo, Sean Rickert. Shane also had a great day on Saturday. He posted his 99th and his 100th win, putting him in the Century Club for wrestling, it's a huge milestone. So we're very proud of him. He did a nice job. The wrestling has been a really, I had reservations about what this wrestling was going to look like in COVID. It's actually been a really good experience. Generally, when we match up with schools, you never know who's going to have a match when you get there. And a lot of times the kids will get a forfeit, or, they don't know if they're wrestling, who's going to get to wrestle until you get there. This year, the coaches have done a nice job. They communicate ahead of time. They talk about how many kids they have in a weight class, and they're matching the kids up before they go. So only the kids that are going to have matches go. And sometimes they're able to get 2 and 3 matches in against one school because they have so many kids in a certain weight class. So it's really, the coaches have really actually been very pleased with how it's working. They're a young team, so this has kind of given them a chance to get a lot of experience. They're having a chance to get kids up, matched up against kids that are similar levels. They're going to finish up this Saturday with a total of 7 scheduled matches. So we thought that was a pretty good schedule with a short amount of time that we had. There you go. How do we forward? Okay. Basketball is, it's gone very, very well. Our varsity girls, as of this Friday, will have played 15 games. They've only posted 1 loss. That was to Cambridge, which has been a reigning 2-time state champion. So it was a good matchup. It was what was anticipated to be the sectional championship this year that they weren't going to have. So it was good. It was, the kids got a lot of competition out of that game. JV, we had a lot of trouble scheduling JV girls just because the schools just didn't have the JV programs this year. So they only had 7 games, but the coaches and the girls were very happy with that schedule. And the varsity boys and the JV girls, or JV boys, they each got 13 and 12 games in. So we ended up with a pretty good schedule for basketball. Fall 2, it's another abbreviated season. It started Monday, running through May 1st. Swimming, football started yesterday. Volleyball and soccer are going to start next Monday. That was agreed upon by the WAC. Right now, that if this weather holds out, you never know. We might be on our fields, but right now our first couple soccer games are scheduled to be at Aframs through April break. But as soon as we can get on the field, I know Anand's ready to put the nets up, get the fields up as soon as that permafrost breaks. So we're very anxious about that. First home football game is March 27th. That's the tentative date right now. We were going to play that at Amsterdam. However, we can't play it at Amsterdam because there was a conflict. So we're looking at either Ravenna or Schenectady High School for that game, but that's TBD. And spring season starts May 3rd, but I think they actually just changed that date today, so it might start in April. So that's sports.
So I have one thing to report tonight. Is the facilities department has been working recently in the past couple of weeks on upgrading our high school room 100, and this is a classroom that's actually located in the older part of the building in the middle school area. It's the family consumer science room, and because of the fact that we've had so many adjustments with the classes this year, it worked out that those classes are out of that room at this point, so that room can be worked on. And right behind that sheetrock wall is actually there's a old concrete wall, and that's the foundation for the old building. And it looked really ratty and ugly, and it wasn't really an inviting place. So it made sense to go ahead and put new sheetrock up, and the guys made their own trim work there around the windows. You can see there, and they cleaned it up really nice. That's all that's left is really to polish the floors, put some wax on it, and put some wall base around the walls. So also on the marker board side there, you can see where there's electric along the bottom there. And right below that, there used to be those old tiles that I think, probably dated back from many, many moons ago. So it looks a heck of a lot better. It's going to be great for the family consumer science classes. I'm really glad that we were able to put this together so that the high school classes can start utilizing the space again, and it'll be good for kids. So we've got our own little in-house construction team.
And not to interrupt Jeff, but just to tell you, we are actually going to start cooking. And so Cindy Rumpled is beyond thrilled that she's going to be able to. So thank you, Jeff, for your guys for doing that, because now our kids can actually get in and do some real consumer science stuff. So again, another positive thing that's happening in the high school. Yay.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's great. Very exciting, and something the students can get back to doing that we've lost recently. So, okay, moving on to the superintendent's update.
So I'm going to talk about two different things. I'm going to talk about our equity and inclusion initiatives so far this year. That was a request from the board, and I'm just going to run through some of those for you. And then I'm going to have you take a look at what we're envisioning classrooms will look like in the future in Duanesburg. So, so when I started, actually before I started, really since last May, I think equity's been on my mind. Certainly, everything that was happening over the course of the summer with the Black Lives Matter movement and the other activism that was happening made me look inward at what schools were doing to support kids of all different types and making sure that school was a comfortable and equitable place for everybody to be in. And so when I started at Duanesburg, it made sense to continue that into our actions here. And that certainly is something that's happening at many schools around us. And so I think that it's important to realize for me that just because a school doesn't have a great amount of racial diversity doesn't mean that it lacks equity issues. Certainly there are issues at every school involving students with special needs, students of different genders and sexualities, and all different economic diversity at different schools that need to be addressed to make sure that everybody feels comfortable and safe and like they belong in a school. So these are some of the things that we've done so far this year. So the first thing that we did is we formed an equity and inclusion committee. And I know Betsy comes to those meetings, and I know that the principals attend those as well. But we started a committee to start talking about well, what can we do as a district to begin first taking stock of where we are with regard to equity issues in our school, and second, to start planning for what actions are we going to take to make sure that those things are addressed. So one of the very first things that we did is Jody and I and Andrea and I think Betsy and some parents from the community also participated in an Equity Literacy Institute training. It was an online training with a whole ton of people on it, and it really was it was sometimes a really sophisticated, in-depth conversation about racial equity and race studies and just theory related to equity issues. And so one of the things that came out of that was that the people who taught that had written a book, and the book was just a small book of case studies on diversity and social justice. And so all year long, as a cabinet, we've been using this small book of case studies every time we meet to talk about a different issue. And some of the issues are things that are very relevant to the things that are happening in our school and have happened in the past. For example, there's been case studies about, chocolate bar sales or attending field trips where the field trip provider has said that it's accessible, but when you get there, accessibility really means that students with disabilities, with physical disabilities, get to watch a video. Different real life scenarios, they're only about a page long, but they provoke some conversation to talk about how we would deal with those things or how we've dealt with similar things in the past. And so I think that that's been really helpful to us. It's been helpful to me anyway, as we're getting to know each other as a cabinet, to find out, how we would address things in the same way or differently. It's helped me get to know a lot about the history of the district as well. So we've been doing that. I know that Andrea has started an economic equity committee in her building. So she's tapped certain people on her staff to just focus on issues in her school that relate to students without economic means and their participation and their ability to achieve success in the school without that support. And so we want to make sure that all kids can be successful regardless of whether or not their parents have to work at night, or regardless of how much money they might have to pay for additional programming. And so you really need to look at everything that you're doing through that lens to make sure that everybody can participate on an equal playing field, to remove all those obstacles from kids. We also have done other things that are smaller but still really important. So I know in the high school and junior high school, during Black History Month in February, there was a daily recognition on the announcements, and then also many teachers did some sort of recognition lessons, integrated that into their curricular areas. And I think that that's really important, to not just put a poster up on the wall, but actually make the thing that you're celebrating influence the curriculum in some way. We are, as Jody said, working on a regional equity summit. So just want to thank Kendra Shadina and the student government for helping to plan this. So we are planning to have this equity summit on May 25th, which is the first anniversary of George Floyd's death, and really something that sparked a lot of community-wide interest in equity-related issues. So it seemed appropriate to recognize that particular day with a return to these thoughts. And so what we're going to do as a school is kick off with a school-wide PBIS event, as Jody said, on March 19th. So I think it's roughly a 90-minute or so event where students are going to learn about first identity and what different identities we have as people, what is important to me, what makes me me. And then they're going to talk about the concept of equity and what it means and how it might be different than other terms that they've heard in the past related to like equality or tolerance or things like that. And so we'll be doing an activity, and then what I hope to do is package that activity up and give it out to schools who want to participate in a regional equity summit on May 25th. So we'll give them an invitation. I already have commitment from several different school districts in the area that want to participate. And basically we'll do an evening event where we will have either panelists or one speaker to talk about equity related issues in schools. And then we will do some kind of networking activity where kids from different schools get to know one another and perhaps talk about a case study, do something together so that they are interacting with one another, which is something that is sorely needed. We forget that in addition to, you know, athletics being about athletics, it's also the only opportunity kids have to really interact with kids from other school districts. And that's really been missing. So we've all been kind of in a silo. And so it's nice to reach out to other districts and participate with them. So we'll do that activity, a kind of a networking activity. And then what we're going to do is we're going to sort of form a steering committee ahead of time that works on a charter. And then we're going to have a discussion of that charter, of this kind of inter-school district organization that's related to equity related issues in schools, with the hope that we can show students what the next step is. So after feeling frustrated and angry about things that just aren't just, there is another step, which is advocacy. So teaching students how to do advocacy work, teaching them what they do to actually make change is a really important thing. So we'll come up with some kind of organization, and then my hope is that the steering committee can then be used to plan future events, and so that it really becomes a student-wide organization that is like self-perpetuating instead of something that is run by outside adults. Like, we'll still be there to provide guidance, but it would be nice if we were following students' lead, because oftentimes they have much better ideas than we have. I also wanted to say that SUNY Schenectady offered up partnership. They have a student organization that would like to participate, and also somebody on staff there who has reached out to say that they want to participate in this and help kids especially know what that next step is. Another thing that we've done, and we've done it with you folks, is to make sure that we've revised our code of conduct and certain board policies to prohibit hateful symbols in our school. Another thing that you'll see when our policy manual is finally ready to be seen is that it now has inclusive language. And so we've been working on that. I know that that was a big project for Celeste, to make sure that we were kind of keeping track of any place in the manual that didn't use inclusive language, and to kind of update that. So those are some of the things that we've done. This is an ongoing initiative. It's never something that we're going to be done with. It's something that has to be ongoing, because the minute you stop thinking about it, 10 more things pop up. And so it's really important to keep this initiative alive and to keep the energy going. And so as soon as we get students involved in this, that has the effect of adding some extra energy into it. I also wanted to show off our idea for a classroom. So we've been talking since last summer. We did apply for a grant that we've since learned we did not get barely. to add a handful of distance learning rooms around the school district. When we applied for that grant, we had very little idea of what that would mean. What would it mean to possibly have distance learning classrooms all over the school? Would we be able to use such a thing? And I think what we found out this year is that, well, we can do just fine with like an ad hoc setup. So with just an inexpensive web camera and a computer, we can do distance learning. And so what we have to do now is plan for future events like this, and also plan so that we can participate with other schools to take advantage of offerings that they might have that we don't have. And so lots of schools have this in mind right now. So this idea that Jody is mentioned with the block scheduling, many schools are thinking right now that now is the right time to really take a look at our schedules and make sure that they align, so that things like collaborating in certain classes can happen easily. So here's some things that we're thinking are going to go in this classroom. We actually looked at several different iterations of what a possible distance learning classroom might be. We have a distance learning classroom right now in the high school. It's really awesome. It definitely has some limitations. One of the limitations is that it doesn't do Google Meets. It only does WebExes. It's all Cisco equipment. It's great equipment, but it's not as flexible. So that was something that we knew we needed to address. And then another thing that we wanted to address is just the expense of it. So I think that classroom, I don't know, Jeff, was it around $40,000 or something like that for the equipment that goes into a distance learning classroom typically?
Yes.
So
Right.
$40,000 per classroom isn't really a scalable option, especially when you're not doing a project, when there's not an infusion of lots of money for technology. So here's some things that we're looking at. So the first thing is audio. So audio is critical when you're doing distance learning of any kind. It's really, really difficult to hear people using bad, if you've ever talked to anybody on a Zoom meeting who has a bad microphone on their computer, it's really difficult to follow. So audio is definitely a primary thing. I think it's more important than video, which we see every day when kids are shutting their cameras off and just going with audio only modes. So what we're looking at is this device called a Front Row Easy Room Trio. So it's about the size of a ceiling tile, and actually replaces one of the ceiling tiles near the front of the classroom. It connects to a display. So it's the audio for what people are hearing at home. They hear that audio directly in their feed, but also it also amplifies the audio in the room. So that it's slightly, the teacher voice is slightly louder for students. And this has a lot of positive benefits. In fact, I've worked in schools where there were just audio systems in the room for only that purpose, to amplify the teacher voice. So there's lots of problems with that. So one, I think that all the principals will tell you that in the fall, it's very difficult to keep our younger teachers, our newer teachers healthy because they're not used to having that teacher voice. And so amplifying their voice reduces strain and fatigue and reduces illness. Another thing that it's helpful for is it gives teachers the ability to refocus from anywhere in the room. So the microphone itself is on a lanyard that teachers wear around their neck. And so you can walk around anywhere in the room, and if you need to get the class's attention, you don't have to be right in front of them. You can really cut over the din from anywhere you are. There's also a lot of research related to that volume for kids that have auditory processing issues, that it really helps with speech perception. So I know that my own child, who'd be mortified to hear it, has a very difficult time when there's white noise happening anywhere. And so there's a classroom that has a fan that's on all the time in a hood. It's a science classroom. And that poses such a distraction that she can hardly do any paying attention in that classroom. And so if you were to just amplify the teacher's voice so that it can cut above that ambient noise, it really has a positive impact. Another thing that this device has on it is an alarm detect system, so that you can actually tie it into your alarm system in school, so that if there's somebody who is hard of hearing in the classroom, they can actually see fire alarms go off. There's other things that you can add to this, like even PA devices you can add to this and use it as your PA system too. But for right now, these are the main benefits of it. There's also a pass-around mic that can go with it that can amplify kid voices if they're presenting. So it's a really interesting device. It's a low-cost device that really can have a positive impact on the recordings that we make and on the classroom environment itself. The other things that we're looking at are a pan tilt zoom camera that would be ceiling mounted, and there'd be several pre-programmed shots that could be changed via a remote control. So if you want a shot of the class, you can press 2 when it's a shot of the class. If you want an overhead camera that's shooting your paper that you have in front of you, so you can send, so people at home can see that. It has the ability to do that, or it could just shoot the front of the room. So you don't have to be like a director constantly changing your shots. They're pre-programmed in. And then the last piece that we are looking at is an interactive touchscreen. So we have touchscreen monitors, as we've seen in just retail stores. The cost of large flat panel TVs has now really decreased. And so now they're less money or the same money as new projectors that we would buy. So instead of replacing a projector with another projector, if we replace it with a flat panel, not only does it make a bigger display, it's a crisper display. We have the ability to interact with the display, and we don't have to keep changing bulbs. And those bulbs are like $150 a pop. And so they last much longer too, much more durable than a projector. This is a really cool device. It's a 75-inch interactive touchscreen. It's compatible. It has a computer that's embedded behind it. It's compatible with any different kind of web conferencing platform, including Google. And it also does things like integrates with Google directly. So after you make a recording, it will go right into a shared folder that kids have access to immediately. Or as soon as you make a recording, it can flash a link that kids can use to access that recording right away. The software is all web-based, so teachers can move from room to room and access their personal setup wherever they are. You can also cast to the board from anywhere. So instead of having to plug into the screen from the front of the room, which really limits the mobility of teachers, you can wirelessly cast from a Chromebook anywhere in the room. Students can also cast to it as well. So students can present to the board from their seats. We got a really good maintenance program. I don't know what that one bullet means, the can see one, but and there's no bulbs to change. So this setup is, I think it's like between $7,000 and $9,000 as opposed to $40,000. So much more scalable than the other option. And so right now we're kind of carefully watching what happens with the stimulus money, which is one-time money that can be used on technology projects frequently. It's actually a good thing to buy with that, because you can't really buy something that needs to be paid for every single year. It's really a one-time use thing. And we're also trying to see with our NARIC partners whether or not this equipment will meet their minimum requirements to still be able to be on their distance learning network and do classes that way. That would definitely give us a lot more flexibility, a lot more opportunities to broadcast different classes on that distance learning network. So instead of just doing one at a time, we could broadcast like every room that has this setup all at the same time, which is a potential revenue generator for us, because when people pick up our distance learning classes, the school district gets revenue for that. So I'm really excited about the possibility of really expanding the technology in our classrooms in this way. The other thing that we're going to try to do along with this is when we redo a room, when we redo the technology in a room, we're also going to try to make the spaces a little bit more conducive for collaboration. And that can be as simple as putting writing spaces on walls throughout the room, either with dry erase panels or dry erase paint, so that kids can collaborate wherever they are in the room. Kids really like writing on walls and glass and all kinds of things. Also looking at our furniture and making sure that we have easily reconfigurable furniture that is conducive for collaboration. So a space that people can easily put people in groups or whatever configuration you want. So as we're kind of modernizing and updating classrooms, we'll take a look at the furniture too and see if those are also things that we should be replacing at the same time. So that's all I have.
Thank you. Does anybody have any questions on that presentation? All very interesting stuff. Okay, moving on to our budget workshop for this evening. Mr. Rivenberg, are you going to present to us?
Yes. I'm just getting the screen set up right now.
Absolutely.
All right, y'all can see that, right?
Yes.
Okay, so tonight, third budget work session. Got some more categories to talk about. We'll talk about the draft budget status. So tonight we'll also talk about debt service, health and benefits, and BOCEs. So the current budget status, pretty much at the same spot we were the last time with what our proposals are. This is same slide that you saw the last two other work sessions. Planning on adding back that music teacher to the junior senior high school. Insurance costs, though, we have realized that the insurance costs are going to be much higher than we have seen in prior years. Just with the combination of the economy and adjustments within our trust, it comes out to be a pretty significant value to our health insurance. So we're going to see that cost increase, and that's what we should expect for this year. And hopefully it'll start to level out over the next couple of years after this adjustment is made. Also, we've talked about the increases to instructional technology, and then looking at leveling out transportation. So not too big of an increase on transportation this year, just because the proposal is now to transition back to the K-12 bus runs. And then also, most importantly, no cuts to instructional programs and other student opportunities that we provide for the district. So current budget status, we're still in draft. And, a lot of that has to do also with what the state's going to say with their budget as well. So this is what the expense budget looks like right now. It's a little bit less actually than the last time we spoke. So it's about $50,000 less than the work session number 2. Found some places in the budget to make some adjustments that are a little more responsible about how we go out to the public. So it looks like $165,000 less than the projected expenses at a rollover budget. Brings us to $17,835,000. That's a total overall spending increase expected of $270,000. Represents a 1.54% increase from budget to budget. So again, we're down to the tax levy increase. So the tax levy, the tax cap has been submitted. It was submitted before the March 1st deadline. It was submitted at the $160,000 or $160,396. It represents only a 1.95% increase on tax levy collection. That also keeping in mind that the tax cap was actually at 4.45%. So we're not going out with that whole amount, that whole value that we could have taken. We're responsibly taking it back and, even putting it below that, below a 2% mark. So going out with that 1.95%. So any of the work that's been done since the last budget work session the past couple of weeks, it's been to increase salary line for the operations. I know that we have presented the operations budget at the last time. So the proposal is, after speaking to Anand just recently, he realized that we really could use a part-time cleaner. So it would be a half-time cleaner at the elementary school, and it's due to its square footage. So when he was looking at square footage, it looks like there is a lack of cleaners in the evening. So our evening cleaners, it'll provide a little bit better cleaning for the building, so that it's better prepared for the morning. So it'll be a 4-hour shift right now, and that's what we're proposing for next year, to see how that goes instead of adding a full-time position. Some reductions in some special ed lines for some tuition that's not anticipated. So looking at some of the special education line, that's actually going to be discussed at the next board work session to talk about instructional, and special education will be included in there as well. But that happens to be one of the areas that I was working on since the last session, and realized that there was some additional money that could have been moved around. So also just some minor adjustments within the budget with staffing lines and contractual obligations, just to adjust anything that's based on expenditures, since also because of the fact that now we're into March, it's a little bit better now that I have the data also to show for January and February. So moving forward, it's a little bit easier to develop a budget, because we've got a couple extra months since we started working on the budget. So budget work this month, we're going to review the anticipated expenses for instructional, including special education. So there may be some adjustments still to the budget by the time we get to session 2, but that's only 2 weeks away. The biggest, most important part of that, of course, is the revenue side. But so the final review of all budget lines, will align with 2021 or 21-22 needs. We're going to be checking for any changes since the budget work sessions have begun. We're going to review the revenue sources and the state aid. So once New York State finalizes their budget, we'll have a better idea as to where we can go with our funding. And then we're going to finalize our budget. So during this month, finalize all our budget documents, and then will be proposed to the board to adopt in April. This is an overall look, bigger breakout than you've seen in the last 2 work sessions, just to show the different areas of the budget. And you can see in the 4th column over percentage, the 3rd column over proposed adjustment, you can see where some of the adjustments are from budget to budget. So these visuals are showing the difference between the 2021 budget and the 21-22 budget. Again, this is representing our current budget right now is for the 2021 school year is $17,565,000, and the overall proposed budget for next year is $17,835,000. So you can see some of the adjustments, some of the largest adjustments, like the negative that comes out of special education, because there was a little extra money there, so we pulled that out, and then there's additional money that's added back into operations for those other expenses that are necessary. And then that data processing line that we had talked about at the first work session, just to add for more applications. And then at the very bottom, you'll also notice that hospital, medical, and dental, that section, that's where we're seeing our increase for our health insurance costs. So just to look at our revenue summary, pretty much the same slide that you've seen the last time. Real property taxes represent $8,385,866, while state aid is remaining stagnant at $8,251,992. It only represents about a little over $14,000. So for the past 2 years, the budget or the foundation aid has not increased. So we're going out again with a revenue projection where foundation aid has not been increased. It's been the same value for the past 3 years now. So foundation aid, just keeping in mind that foundation aid was created to cover those increased costs that districts are faced with. So now, because of the fact that the foundation aid is not there, or it's not, it's not increasing with the cost of doing business and the cost of increased programs, contractual items, and et cetera, districts are being forced across the state, obviously, to find other ways to fund their budget. It's very difficult. So this year with our budget, we're seeing a little bit more appropriated fund balance carry over from prior year, especially from the 1920 school year. And you remember when we were shut down, we did gain some extra fund balance. So we have to actually use that now in order to fund the budget to move forward. So we're looking at, over 5% right now in fund balance, where in years prior, we've looked at somewhere around 3.5% to maybe 4.5% in fund balance. So we're using a little bit more of that fund balance to balance the budget moving forward, so that hopefully we can keep going in the next 3 to 5 years while the economy's being a little difficult for us. So one of the first topics we'll talk about tonight is debt service. This is one of those things that kind of is pretty much set in stone when we go out and ask the public for our debt, or to vote on our capital projects and for our buses. So you get your bonds on the top. So bond principal for construction, and then also bond principals for bus purchases. So these are the bond is decided when the community votes on construction projects, and then the bus purchases, we do those annually. So every year when we do a bus purchase, we do a bond for 5 years for the buses, and we have a 10-year recycling project for the buses as well, because at some point around the 10 years, they've got a ton of mileage on them, and it's a lot harder to pass inspections for buses. So we keep that cycle going so that we don't end up with a bus fleet full of rusty buses or ones that won't pass a DOT inspections. And then that follow the last two lines, that band principal. So that's when we actually take on our debts for capital projects. So we use that to kind of float that in between that year, that first year, right before you actually take out a bond when we do our construction. So the first few years, like the 2016 and the 17 year, that's when we actually had a ban, and then it turns into a bond after that. So you can see over those years from 2016, 17, 18, the 18, 19 years when all of the debts came on for that capital project, and that's when we also started to take on more interest payments as well. So those first few years that we make debt payments are actually years when we have the highest interest. So overall, for next year, for the 21-22 school year, we actually had a slight increase on the bus debts, just because of the cost of, the increased cost of buses, while building debt is actually slightly decreasing. And I'll show that in one of the following slides, that you'll see actually our debt service is actually going to decrease with our capital project payments that we're making on an annual basis. So this is the slide I was actually talking about. So this slide right here is one we also had shown during the long range planning discussion. And you can see over the past few years, we've had, as the project came on, estimated building debt actually went down, while interest payments, while total debt service moving forward into the 26-27 school year, we have to be aware that that debt is actually dropping off after the 26 or the 25-26 school year. So that's why we're starting to talk about finding an architect so that we can start planning for our next capital project. Because what happens if you don't take on additional debt and maintain your buildings, you start to your tax calculation is also changing as well. So sometimes actually, and for school districts anyway, debt is actually a good thing. It keeps our finances actually in a straight level path. So in that 26-27 school year, that's going to be that year that we're going to start to take on a little bit more debt to do our renovations. In combination of that, though, the board had actually established a capital reserve fund. So that capital reserve fund will allow us to actually float that capital project a little bit better around that 2005, right around the year 2005, so that we can actually float into the 2006, 26-27 school year. it may allow us to even start our capital project a little bit sooner, just because of the fact that we've got that capital reserve. It also keeps us from having to tax the community even higher for when we go to borrow debt and when we go to maintain our buildings. So that extra $6 million that we established in that capital reserve fund, it actually helps us to save money from asking, or save us from asking the community to put out more money at this point. We're taking our savings and we're putting it forward, so you don't pay on that interest. This next section, employee benefits. So this is the one where we see the highest increase. So employee retirement system, New York State teacher retirement system, and that health insurance are one of the biggest, are actually the few of the biggest lines, especially for employee benefits. So retirement systems have fluctuated over the past few years. So employee benefits makes up of retirement systems, workers' comp, unemployment insurance, health and dental, and other benefits. We have a self-insured dental plan here in Duanesburg, and it actually does pretty well. So that's where we actually see some savings. And you'll see, like in our budget, the dental line hasn't really changed by any significant amount in several years. So having that self-insured line or self-insured plan for dental is really good for us. And then unemployment insurance, that's fluctuated obviously with the pandemic, but I will show, I think, on the next slide. Okay, so on this slide, I'm actually showing the difference between benefits. So over the years, you can see it fluctuates quite a significant amount, and it's because of the fact that retirement systems actually have gone down. So we've presented in past budgets that ERS and TRS were on a decline. While moving forward, it's actually projected now that they're going to increase. So sure enough, for the 21-22 school year, that retirement system, or both retirement systems, are increasing. So that's why we see this significant jump in combination with our health insurance costs. So we've got this big jump. And if we look back even further from like the 2000 or earlier than the 2016 school year, you'll see that the benefits lines have really fluctuated, and they go up and down, and it's because of economic impacts as well. So retirement systems tend to be affected a lot with economic impacts, as well as the health insurance lines. So I kind of described this a little bit more on the other slide, but you can see TRS, I broke this out so that you can see how TRS expenditures have gone down, even since 2014-15. ERS has it's bounced around a little bit, but not too much. It's stayed pretty level, but our expenses are, they're going to continue to fluctuate. So in that 2014-15 school year, that was right around the time that we were, there was a lot of other things going on with the economy. That's when the gap elimination adjustment was still in play. So those years right before that, before that 2015-16 school year was before when we had that gap elimination adjustment. So again, those fluctuations. So next we're going to talk about BOCES aid. School districts receive funds from the state, and it's called BOCES aid, for the shared services purchased in the prior year. The aid is distributed directly to the individual districts. So the amount that's reimbursed to districts is based on state-approved formula. So we have no control over this actual formula. So when we break out and decide to use BOCES services, there are certain services that are really good and beneficial to the district, because we actually get, not only we get this great service, but we also get a reimbursement the following year. So even if it's a little bit higher of an expenditure for a service, we actually will see a really good amount of funding come back to the district the following year. So up front, you might have to pay a little bit more for a BOCES service, but in the long run, as you move forward, it actually makes better sense, and it saves the district a lot of money, especially when we're also able to buy services that are cooperative with other districts. So a lot of other districts will participate in the same programs and the same COSERs, and allows us to save money. So this is that part of that services aid that we had talked about in the past couple slides as well. So that BOCES aid, we're really hoping that it gets broken back out when they do the state budget.
Yeah, and from everything that we're hearing, it looks like that is almost guaranteed to happen, that there's not really any support for keeping all those expense-based aids in a consolidated block grant. So it looks like that's going to happen. I just wanted to take a second to talk about BOCES, to just kind of elaborate on what Jeff just said, because I think that sometimes when you're looking at a school district's budget, the BOCES portion seems so much larger than others. And so though this is in a year where we're looking at things really critically to make cuts, that often comes up. But it's important to know that BOCES really does mean opportunities for our kids that we wouldn't be able to provide otherwise. So the ones that get the headlines, I think, are the career and technical education programs and the special education programs. There's lots of other programs beyond career and technical ed and special education that BOCES helps us with, including things like communications. There's no way that our school district would be able to afford a communications person of the caliber that we have were it not for being able to participate in a shared service through BOCES. Cap Region BOCES has probably one of the best public relations school departments in the state. Also technology. So some of the technology that I just talked about, the fact that all of our kids have Chromebooks. The reason why they're able to have Chromebooks is because we get money back on the dollar when we purchase those Chromebooks through BOCES. And so those help us to be able to compete with other schools that might have more wealth. Also, lots of management things, like we're using BOCES now for everything from certain business and actuarial services to HR services, to curriculum, non-public textbooks, being able to coordinate the textbooks that private schools get, arts and education, our substitute services. It's just like the list over on the side is a small portion of the programs that we actually purchased through BOCES. So last year, we were able to obtain $624,000 back in BOCES aid. So a revenue stream because of spending that we made. So for every dollar that we spend, we get about 53 cents back if we make that purchase on a COSER BOCES service. So it's a really important service. And so when that's why you'll see superintendents, especially from smaller schools and schools in upstate New York, really get agitated when when executive budgets threaten to cut expense-based lines like this. Because without things like BOCES aid, we wouldn't have the resources that other schools with higher wealth have.
Sorry, I lost my mouse for a minute. All right. Onward to this is the a breakout of the BOCES budget lines. So I just want to emphasize, like, I'm showing you all of the budget lines and what they're actually used for. I won't go through and read them all, but we've talked about a few of these BOCES lines actually while we were talking about in other work sessions, because they're actually in other functions of the budget. So this is not in combination, or this is not in addition to the other portions of the budget that we've talked about. They're actually pretty much in combination with those areas. So they're actually intertwined with the other categories. So we talked about the general support budget, which is the 1010 lines all the way down through the 1480 line, and then maintenance operations is the 1620 and the 1680 line. So you can see that those lines are actually part of those budgets when we had talked about those. And again, so the other one would be regular education BOCES. So that 2110 line is a big line. That's actually that's where we get our support for summer school. And then there's the special education line. So the 2250 code as well. So those lines are all within the budget. But the BOCES expenditures in general is just it's a big portion of our budget because we utilize those services to help the district. So this is an overall look at what the budget actually looks like for BOCES. And you can see the OCED BOCES line is actually, so that's like how we send our kids to CTE and to any programs that they can attend outside of the facilities of Dwaynesburg. So we provide those opportunities to them. And then of course, we see that state aid come back because of that expenditure. Also special education tuition. So even though this is a really high line, there's actually a lot of savings to using budget for, or BOCES for special education tuition, because we continue to see that aid come back the following year. So you can see that this portion of the budget, it's over $1 million, but we see that aid come back in the following year, and it makes a lot of sense.
Also point out just that certain things, like if you go back to the chart that you were just looking at, Jeff, so our the number of special ed students that we have in both these programs is actually very small, but you'll notice that it's the largest amount that we have. So another thing that people often overlook isn't just the fact that the revenue comes back to us, or that the other thing that's really important is that these are specialized staff who can do programs for our kids who have the most need. And also, in many cases, we're offering students the opportunity by sending them to a BOCES program to interact with other kids who have similar needs as them, as opposed to keeping them in an isolated class here, or putting them in a class with students who have widely different needs. So although we want to integrate as many students as we can into our general ed classes, sometimes it just makes sense to give students that experience to be around other kids who have similar interests and similar needs. And so that's a really important point too.
So this is an overall look at what our BOCES budget has been over the past few years, and then looking forward to the 21-22 school year. So we're not really going to see a huge increase overall for the BOCES budget, but some of the increases are going to come from that data processing line that we had talked about in work session 1, personnel services that we had added for any of our HR services. It has proven already to be a very helpful service. And then just regular budget to budget increases. So overall, a lot of programs will continue to, those expenses will continue to rise with the expense of contractual and supply costs that are going to increase in future year. So some of the decreases, that would be that special education tuition, not anticipated. So that was lowered just a little bit. And then the computer aided instruction line, what was actually, some of that money was transferred over to that data processing line. So that kind of balanced out our budget lines a little bit more. Oop. So this is a look at what our actual BOCES aid has been over the past few years. And historically, it's projected based on expenditures over prior year. So you can see that in that 2021 school year, I just wanted to show this because this is what happened when the pandemic hit in 1920. We had less expenditures in BOCES services. Any additional services that we might have opted into, it actually reduced our BOCES aid for that for this current year. So our state aid has actually gone down compared to what we originally would have projected, earlier on. So moving forward, though, we are expecting that we're going to pick those services back up, and we're going to continue to get that aid. So based on this 2021 school year, we are using BOCES. We've, like we've said, we've actually used some increase some of their services. So we should see that BOCES aid continue to come back, provided we continue to get that, as long as that services aid does actually indeed come back. And like Dr. Niedermeyer said, they are saying there's a lot optimistic people out there that are saying that we are going to get that aid back. So Proposition 2 on the budget vote will be to purchase 2 30-passenger buses and 1 71-passenger bus. All buses will be fueled with gasoline, and the purchase will not exceed $242,000. So this is actually less than we have seen over the past couple of years because we're purchasing 2 smaller buses instead of 2 larger buses. So we'll see that that debt service will also start to decline at one point when these buses are actually put onto bond. Also, just a note that all of our diesel fuel buses are now out of the fleet, so we won't be paying for diesel fuel as much. The only diesel fuel that we have to buy are basically to fill up our tractors and our lawnmowers for the facilities department. So we are entirely either gasoline and propane. So next year, actually, a couple of the buses that would come off of the fleet may actually be propane buses because we've had propane buses for that long in our district. So some important dates, just to note, the March 23rd budget discussion will be the last final budget work session. And then the community budget presentation where the board adopts the budget, April 13th. And then public budget hearing May 4th, and the budget vote will be at the Duanesburg Junior Senior High School from 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. on May 18th. And so tonight we talked about the status of where we are with the budget, health and benefits, debt service, and BOCES. And if there's any additional discussion, but I will turn this over to Dr. Niedermeyer to lead in that discussion.
Does anybody have any questions or concerns with anything that Jeff presented tonight?
I have one of my odd questions. What happens to the buses once they're retired? What do we do with them?
I can answer this. So I know that we we trade them in the same as you would trade in a car. And I can tell you that we don't get as much on the buses for trade-ins as you'd think that we would. Although we did a little better on the buses this year than we usually do.
Right.
We basically trade them in for credit, correct, Jeff? On
yes.
Purchases.
Yeah, so we've actually found, it just depends on the year. We've actually found that you can either trade them in and you might get an okay value, or you can actually put them up for auction. So we've used, we've actually also auctioned them off. In some cases, it's actually worth more to actually just trade them into the company that we're buying the buses from. They go out and I guess they sell them to whoever wants them, other countries or whatever. So they ship them off.
Okay, thank you.
Tailgating football fans, things like that.
Yep.
Any other questions? So I can say that we're currently working on some different appointments to do some outreach with our final budget presentation. Also, you should know that we expect to hear about a one-house budget pretty soon, and that'll give us an idea of what the final budget is likely to be. I don't really know how the latest stimulus package that was passed by the federal government is going to affect the budget, but we will see that. And so I hope that, I hope that it can only be positively. The only thing that could possibly be negative is if it's used to offset additional cuts that might create a bigger hole to kind of deal with down the road. And so I hope that that doesn't happen. I hope that the money is smoothed out over time, and that it doesn't supplant anything, but it's only used to supplement money that we already have. And I also hope that we see something more than a flat foundation aid. But I can tell you that if that's the case, so if our budget ends up being more positive than we think it is right now, what we'll do is we'll reduce the fund balance that we're using and try to save more of that. There's also a bill that's being considered right now to increase the amount of fund balance that school districts are allowed to carry from 4% to 8%. That's something that a lot of schools have been pushing for a long time. I know it's something that Jeff would be eager to do. It's really difficult to, you try to save for a rainy day, but being able to only save so much is really challenging. And we can put money in reserves, but that money is very difficult to access once you've put it there, especially in some reserves. They often require a vote from the community. And so being able to keep that money in fund balance without fear of a nasty note from the comptroller would definitely be something that would be beneficial to us and to a lot of other school districts. Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, and as always, if we think of any questions, we will get in touch with Jim and Jeff. Thank you both for that presentation. Moving on down our agenda for this evening, presentation and approval of prior Board of Education meeting minutes. First, we have approving the minutes of February 23rd, 2021 Board of Education meeting. Recommendation, the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the February 23rd, 2021 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Oh, I don't know, Celeste, what do you think?
I heard Diane.
Well, Diane added the visual to her verbal, so I think it goes to Diane this time.
And I heard Shane with his deep voice, so I'm not sure.
Okay, so how about Diane, and then Shane, would you second the motion?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Thank you. Any questions, comments, changes, additions, deletions to the February 23rd, 2021 board minutes? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Then we have approving the minutes of the special March 3rd, 2021 Board of Education meeting. Recommendation, the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the special meeting on March 3rd, 2021 as submitted. Do I have a motion on that?
A motion.
Thanks, Deb. How about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Betsy. Any comments, corrections, changes, questions on those minutes? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? All right, moving on down our agenda, the Board of Education Standing Committee reports. I think, Jane, did Buildings and Grounds just meet, or are you meeting later this week?
We're meeting tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow. Okay, gotcha. So we're a day off, but we'll. I'm sure we'll have some news from you then at the next meeting. Okay. And I think that's. I don't think we have any other committee meetings. I know we're still working on getting the policy manual finalized. Right.
Yeah, we're just waiting on Erie sent just some clarifying questions that Jim took care of, and then it's on them again. I believe, right, Jim? We're just waiting.
Okay, so waiting for them to come back to us with an all clear kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Thank you. And thank you again to that committee for the huge amount of work that they've done. Okay. Moving on down to financial items. First, we have the accepting the financial reports. Recommendation, the Board of Education accept the appropriation status, budget transfer, revenue status, treasurer, and ECA reports ending January 31st, 2021, as provided by the treasurer and recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Okay, Diane, how about Deb? Would you second that?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or comments on those financial reports? Okay, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next on our agenda is approving the contract with with South Colony Central School District. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the contract for health and welfare services between South Colony School District and Duanesburg Central School District for September 14th, 2020 to June 25th, 2021, as recommended by the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. This agreement shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion?
That's Teresa.
Teresa? Sorry, I coughed. Okay, how about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Jane. Any questions or comments on the proposed agreement? Okay, all in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next item is accepting the claims auditor's report. Recommendation to Board of Education accept the claims auditor's comments on general warrant A14 dated February 25th, 2021. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Betsy. How about a second?
I'll second.
Great, Tony, thank you. Any questions or comments on general warrant A14? Okay, all in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to approve cross-contract with Mahonison Central School District. Recommendation, the Board of Education approve the cross-contract for special education services between Mahonison Central School District and Duanesburg Central School District for the March 8th, 2021 to June 30th, 2021, as recommended by the superintendent. This agreement shall not be binding on the parties until authorized and signed by each party's respective representatives. Do I have a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Thanks, Diane. How about a second?
I'll second. It's Teresa.
Thanks. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? The next item is approving the memorandum of agreement between the district and the DESA. Be it resolved, the Board of Education hereby approves the memorandum of agreement between the district and the Duanesburg Education Support Association dated March 9th, 2020. Should that be March 9th, 2021?
Yes.
March 9th, 2021, with respect to wages, hours, and other terms and conditions of employment for titles under clerical staff, and authorizes the superintendent, bless you, to execute the agreement.
Again.
Bless you again. This agreement shall take effect on March 15th, 2021, and will be reflected in the subsequent pay periods. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Deb. How about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Tony. Any questions or comments on the approved MOA? Or I'm sorry, on this MOA, I should say. We're not approved yet. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to the other items on our agenda, accepting the CSE minutes. Recommendation, the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CSE CPSE meetings and their minutes from February 12th, 22nd, 25th, 2021 meetings. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Shane. How about who is that? How about a second? Tony?
Yeah.
You? Okay. A second for Tony. Any questions on the CSE minutes? Okay. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to personnel items. Accepting separation and appointment of P. Hardenstein. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby accepts the resignation of Penny Hardenstein from the position of Director of Physical Education and Instructional Studies effective June 30th, 2021, and approves the settlement agreement by and between the district and Ms. Hardenstein, and authorizes the payment of money thereunder. And be it further resolved that Ms. Hardenstein shall be appointed to the position of Assistant Administrator in the Administrative Tenure area effective July 1st, 2021, through the earlier of the date by which Ms. Hardenstein may first retire without penalty, or March 1st, 2022, at which time Ms. Hardenstein shall retire under the rules of the retirement system in accordance with the settlement agreement. Do I have any questions or I'm sorry, no, we need a motion first. I apologize. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Betsy, I think that was you. And how about a second? Was that you, Deb?
Sure.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions or comments on this resolution regarding this agreement? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to approve coaching appointments. Recommendation: the Board of Education approve the following appointment as recommended by the Superintendent and Athletic Director. ECA appointments are for the applicable 2020-2021 school year and sports season, beginning with preseason practice and ending at the conclusion of the season, including sectional play. All appointments are employees at will, and the appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school season, term, or year. The operation of certain clubs and activities are subject to COVID-19 related restrictions. And we have the appointment of Isabel Kalin, volunteer girls soccer coach. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Tony. How about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Ben. Any questions or comments on the appointment? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next item is approve agreement between the district and the Assistant Superintendent of Management Services. Be it resolved, the Board of Education of the Duanesburg Central School District hereby approves the terms and conditions agreement for Jeffrey Rivenberg dated March 9th, 2021, authorizes the board president to execute the agreement, and approves the payment of money contained therein. Do I have a motion?
A motion. Teresa.
Thanks, Teresa. How about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Shane. Any questions or comments on that motion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to approve reassignment. Recommendation: the Board of Education approve the following reassignments as recommended by the Superintendent and Assistant Superintendent of Management Services effective March 15, 2021. Liz Fiorini to be School District Treasurer, Civil Service Permanent Appointment with a probationary term of 3/15/2021 to 3/15/2022. Michelle Hunley, Clerical Aide in Accounts Payable effective 3/15/2021. And Serena Killenberger, Clerical Aide in Guidance Counseling Office, Civil Service Permanent Appointment with a probationary term of 3/15/2021 to 3/15/2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Tony. How about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Betsy. Any questions or comments on those reassignments and the new appointment also? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Next on our agenda is approved conditions of employment between the district and the secretary to the superintendent. Resolved that the Board of Education hereby approves the conditions of employment by and between the district and the secretary to the superintendent, setting forth the terms and conditions beginning July 1st, 2021 and ending on June 30th, 2024, approves payment thereunder and authorizes the superintendent to execute said agreement. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thanks, Deb. How about a second?
I'll second.
Thanks, Tony. Any questions or comments on the proposed agreement? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Next, it is our intention to go into executive session in order to discuss the employment history of certain employees. And at that time, when we end executive session, we will not be conducting any further public business. So we would be ending the meeting at that time as well. Do I have a motion to enter into executive session?
All motion.
Thanks, Shane. How about a second?
I'll second.
Tony, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, so we will use the other link to conduct our executive session. Thank you. Good night, all.
Good night.